In June 1812, a man who had crowned himself Emperor of France assembled the largest army Europe had ever seen, over 450,000 soldiers, and marched it into Russia, fully convinced he was unstoppable. Within months, that army would be reduced to a frozen, starving remnant of itself, one of the most catastrophic military collapses in human history. 3 years later, the same man would be exiled to a tiny island in the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean, over 1,000 miles from any continent, where he would die slowly, almost certainly poisoned, watched constantly by the very enemies who feared he might escape again. This is the entire story of Napoleon Bonaparte, the artillery officer from a minor noble family who crowned himself emperor, conquered most of Europe, and then lost it all just as fast as he built it. Napoleon was born in 1769 on the island of Corsica, just 1 year after France had taken control of it. His family were minor nobility, Italian in origin, with a respectable name, but very little actual money. As a child, he was sent to mainland France for military schooling, where his thick Corsican accent and modest background made him an outsider among the wealthier French cadets around him. He graduated from Military Academy in 1785 as a second lieutenant in the artillery, just 16 years old. For years, nothing about Napoleon's career suggested he was destined for anything extraordinary. He was just one more young officer in a French army about to be consumed by revolution. Then, in 1789, everything changed. The French Revolution erupted, the monarchy collapsed, and the entire structure of French society, including its military, was thrown into chaos. For most officers, this chaos was a threat. For Napoleon, it was an opportunity. In 1793, French revolutionary forces were struggling to retake the city of Toulon from royalist rebels and British naval support. Napoleon, then a young artillery captain, proposed a bold plan to bombard the British fleet directly out of the harbor. It worked. Toulon was retaken, and Napoleon, barely 24 years old, was promoted to brigadier general almost overnight. It should have been the beginning of an unstoppable rise. Instead, it nearly ended his career before it started. When the radical phase of the revolution collapsed and Robespierre was executed in 1794, Napoleon's known associations with Robespierre's allies made him politically suspect. He was arrested and briefly imprisoned, his entire future suddenly in serious doubt. He survived, but the lesson stuck with him for the rest of his life. In revolutionary France, power could vanish as fast as it appeared. By 1795, France's new government, the Directory, was struggling to maintain control. When royalist rebels rose up against the government in Paris itself, Napoleon was given command of the forces defending the capital. He crushed the uprising using artillery against the crowds in the streets, a brutally effective and controversial tactic that nonetheless saved the government and made him a hero in the eyes of the men now running France. The following year, in 1796, at just 26 years old, Napoleon was given command of the French army of Italy. It was, on paper, an unremarkable post. His troops were exhausted, poorly equipped, and underpaid. What followed was one of the most stunning military campaigns in European history. In a matter of weeks, Napoleon knocked the Kingdom of Sardinia entirely out of the war. He then turned on Austrian forces in northern Italy, winning battle after battle through brilliant tactics and sheer audacity, eventually pushing deep enough into Austrian territory that Vienna itself was within striking distance. Austria sued for peace. Napoleon, a general barely out of his 20s, had just single-handedly redrawn the map of northern Italy and forced one of Europe's great powers to the negotiating table. He returned to Paris a national hero, and the Directory, increasingly nervous about his growing popularity, decided the safest thing to do with Napoleon was to send him somewhere far away. In 1798, they handed him a new mission: invade Egypt and cut off Britain's trade route to India. The campaign began well. Napoleon's forces defeated Egypt's ruling military caste in the Battle of the Pyramids. But weeks later, the British Navy under Admiral Horatio Nelson found and utterly destroyed the French fleet at the Battle of the Nile, stranding Napoleon's entire army in Egypt with no way home. For most generals, this would have been a career-ending disaster. Napoleon, characteristically, simply abandoned his stranded army and slipped back to France in secret, arriving home just as the Directory's government was collapsing into total dysfunction. He arrived at exactly the right moment. In November 1799, Napoleon and a group of political allies staged a coup, overthrowing the Directory and replacing it with a new government called the Consulate. Napoleon installed himself as first consul, the most powerful man in France in all but name. In the years that followed, Napoleon proved he wasn't just a brilliant general, he was also a genuinely effective administrator. He created the Bank of France, reformed the education system, and introduced the Napoleonic Code, a sweeping new legal framework that guaranteed equality under the law and abolished feudal privilege for good. Versions of that legal code are still the foundation of legal systems across parts of Europe and the world today, but equality under the law apparently didn't apply to political power itself. In 1802, Napoleon had himself named first consul for life. 2 years later, in December 1804, in a coronation ceremony at Notre Dame Cathedral with the Pope himself in attendance, Napoleon did something almost unthinkable. As he was about to be crowned, he took the crown from the Pope's hands and placed it on his own head. The message couldn't have been clearer. Napoleon's power came from no one but himself. What followed was a decade of nearly continuous warfare across the European continent, a conflict so vast it's now simply called the Napoleonic Wars. In December 1805, Napoleon achieved what many historians still consider his single greatest victory, the Battle of Austerlitz, where his forces decisively crushed a combined Russian and Austrian army, nearly double his own troop strength, through a deliberately staged retreat that lured the enemy into a trap. Victory followed victory. Napoleon's brothers and loyal generals were installed as kings across conquered territory in Holland, Italy, Spain, and Naples. At the height of his power, Napoleon controlled, directly or through allied states, the vast majority of continental Europe. Only Britain, protected by its navy, remained consistently beyond his reach. To finally break British economic power, Napoleon attempted a massive continental blockade, cutting off European trade with Britain entirely. When Russia eventually broke from this blockade, Napoleon made the decision that would define the rest of his life. In June 1812, he assembled the largest army the continent had ever seen, roughly 450,000 men, and invaded Russia. It was a catastrophe almost beyond comprehension. Russian forces refused to engage in the decisive battle Napoleon wanted, instead retreating deeper into their own territory, burning crops, towns, and supplies as they went, denying the French army anything to live off of. When Napoleon's forces finally reached Moscow, they found the city abandoned and deliberately set ablaze by its own residents. With no victory, no peace agreement, and winter rapidly closing in, Napoleon was forced to retreat. The retreat from Moscow became one of the deadliest disasters in military history, as starvation, disease, brutal cold, and constant harassment from Russian forces tore the Grand Army apart. Of the roughly 450,000 men who marched into Russia, only a small fraction would ever make it home. Napoleon's aura of invincibility, the thing that had won him battle after battle through sheer reputation alone, was shattered. Sensing weakness, a coalition of Prussia, Russia, Austria, and Sweden moved against him. In October 1813, they decisively defeated Napoleon at the Battle of Leipzig, the largest battle Europe had seen before the 20th century. By March 1814, coalition forces had captured Paris itself. On April 6, 1814, Napoleon abdicated the throne and was exiled to the small Mediterranean island of Elba, given ironic sovereignty over a tiny territory after once ruling most of a continent. It should have ended there. It didn't. Less than a year later, hearing that the restored French monarchy was deeply unpopular back home, Napoleon escaped Elba with roughly 1,000 loyal supporters and returned to France. What followed was almost unbelievable. As Napoleon marched toward Paris, the soldiers sent to stop him instead defected to his side, unit after unit, without a single shot fired. The restored king fled, and Napoleon walked back into power exactly as he'd left it, at the head of an army that adored him. This second reign would last only 100 days. European powers, terrified of a renewed Napoleonic war across the continent, mobilized immediately. On June 18, 1815, Napoleon's forces met a combined British and Prussian army near a small Belgian town called Waterloo. After a brutal, chaotic day of fighting, Napoleon's forces were decisively defeated. It was over. On June 22, 1815, Napoleon abdicated for the second and final time. This time, his enemies weren't taking any chances. Rather than another nearby island he might escape from again, Napoleon was exiled to St. Helena, a remote British-held island in the South Atlantic Ocean, over 1,000 miles from the nearest continent. He would spend the rest of his life there, closely guarded, dictating his memoirs, and slowly, mysteriously declining in health. Napoleon Bonaparte died on St. Helena on May 5, 1821, at just 51 years old. The exact cause remains debated to this day, with stomach cancer being the most widely accepted explanation, though theories of arsenic poisoning have persisted for 2 centuries. By the time of his death, the empire Napoleon had built through sheer ambition and battlefield genius had completely collapsed, and France was left smaller than it had even been before the revolution that first launched his career. And yet his legacy proved far more permanent than his empire ever was. The legal code he created still underlies the legal systems of dozens of countries today. His military strategies are still studied in academies around the world, and the image of Napoleon himself, the brilliant, ruthlessly ambitious outsider who crowned himself emperor through sheer force of will, has never really left popular imagination. From a minor noble family on a small Mediterranean island to the self-crowned emperor of nearly an entire continent, to a slow and lonely death on a remote rock in the middle of the ocean, Napoleon's story remains one of history's most staggering rises and one of its most total collapses. Every empire falls eventually. Napoleon's just happened to fall as fast and as dramatically as it rose.